Hi, everyone. I'm Dave Moroska. I'm President and CEO of AI Strategy. I'd like to thank Josh and the folks at Deep Tech for the opportunity to meet with all of you today. And I'm presenting 9High. It's a novel AI-enabled platform for driving the success of new technologies. It's really a decision guidance platform. Next slide. So what does the DoD need? So some of you may be familiar with this issue and some may not, but the DoD invests obviously billions of dollars into R&D and new technologies every year. And yet about 90% of these innovations actually fail, while the need for innovation only gets higher. So what we're looking to do is actually get a lot of these technologies through the valley of death, which a lot of people hear about from both investing side and development side of technologies. Next slide. And really, it's not any easier for investors and enterprises either. Industry struggles with this as well. Organizations that evaluate and try to integrate new technologies often struggle with the same issues that folks do on the DoD side. They need to assess new technology that really could have huge business implications, not only for the present product mix, but really for decisions that of products and technologies that could have an impact on their business really for the next 10 years. You know, there could be literally thousands of people involved in different types of investments. And the right decision, you know, can really lead to either success or demise. So a lot of examples all throughout various types of industries: automotive, drones, energy, defense and aerospace, you name it. Everybody faces a similar problem. Next slide. So what are the reasons for these failures? It's a lack of actionable intelligence and prior outcome experience that leads to poor decision making, right? So what happens is people make, you know, investments into the wrong innovation. There's limited knowledge that they can share across their organization. They might fail to identify what those red flags are when they're going through and trying to assess either when they're, you know, investing into a technology or when they're developing that technology. You know, so it's really making great choices that are not subjective. You know, we want to bring in objectivity and we want to bring in quantitative measurements into really all the decisions that go into investment and development of new technologies. Next slide. So what is 9High all about? Really, it leverages well over 15 years of experience that we have in turning subjective information into objective guidance, and then qualitative opinions into quantitative decisions. You've probably all been sitting around, you know, boardrooms and tables and laboratories where everybody's got a different opinion. And you know which one usually wins the day. It's probably typically the loudest voice of the person with the most experience, but it's not necessarily based on any great quantitative decision metrics. So what we're doing is we're using very specific and repeatable metrics, these 9 FPMs that I'll talk about later, both to actually select the technology, and then we use those same metrics when we go actually through development and we bring technologies through multiple TRLs all the way up to deployment. And even once we deploy, we're still using very similar metrics to actually monitor life cycles of products. Next slide. So here's an example of, just very quickly, so there's 9 fundamental prime metrics that we use that are always standardized for any technology. We have, and these are arranged in power set configuration I'll talk about in the next slide. But realistically, you can look at this slide and very quickly see where the issues are with a particular either investment or development program that you might have, and which areas are doing well. So green obviously has, you know, risks that are being addressed as you're going through development, but the red areas are areas where folks really need to focus on and try and get some better solutions or better ways of providing evidence that can reduce risk throughout the development process. Next. So how does this really work? This is really the key. This is the fundamental way that our system in 9High works. And it's the way I've run 3 businesses before. I ran the largest test laboratory in the country, the largest private one for the DoD at Dayton T. Brown here in Long Island. And just whenever I've been working through business scenarios or helping folks with technology development efforts, I always come back to these fundamentals. And really what it is, it's a progression of 2 different tiers of power sets that we look at in order to look at all those essential measurements that we need to make decisions while we're going through a development process. Next slide. And how does this work? Well, what we're using is higher order logic. Using what we're doing is building out 5 different AI agents that really look at this from a quantitative aspect, while people are looking at it from the human perspective. So we see these 9 words and these 9 measurements that we want to improve. Meanwhile, AI is working behind the scenes to make recommendations and look at various options for you based on prior development activities that fall into the 3 categories of either the technology, the team that's working on the technology, or the application. So this power set lets machines do what they do best and lets humans do what they do best. Next. As far as traction, where are we right now? Very happy to thank the U.S. Air Force for starting us off within the AFWERX program. We won a phase 1 and a phase 2. I was sponsored by the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense in doing that. And AFWERX is great because they do allow, folks, as long as there's an aircraft, an Air Force component, they allow award, to sort of non-pure Air Force programs. So this is a joint program. This is the Joint Munition Technology Program that started us off with phase 2. And the fellow that supported us was actually very successful within there. And I'm happy to say that we were part of that. And since has moved over to Defense Production Act Title III. He's now the director of Title III and has just awarded us a contract to start off this $9.3 million in funding. So we were actually successfully gotten through that valley of death that we talked about in the first slide and got funding for phase 3, which is very good. The nice thing about working with Defense Production Act Title III is their existence, their sole existence is to support the U.S. industrial base and to drive innovation. So while we're developing out a platform that will work for whatever effort DPA Title III wants to develop, we'll also be working with all their partner industrial manufacturers to get that commercial traction. So it's nice that we have a platform that kind of bridges both sides, both government and industry. Next. Just as proof of some of that, I can't say which 2, but there's two folks in the top IT government contractors that we're already working with. One we're under contract with, and the other one has offered to help us in basically anything that we need in order to deploy to DPA Title III. So pretty good examples right here. We've got 2 of these folks on board already. And next slide. So the ask, what we're looking for is very specifically right up front. If there's anybody in the audience or if there's any folks that know of Air Force stakeholders that would be interested in working with us to do some pilot work and build this into your program offices, since we are getting non-Air Force funding from the Secretary of Defense, we qualify for external funds, and we can get up to $4.6 million from the Strat-5 program. Likewise, for commercial companies, very interested in doing pilot programs with large companies that have diverse technology needs. And then for investors, real quick, we're planning on doing an A or B round next year, Q3 to Q4. Next slide. That's it. This is really just our development team on 12 and 13, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Dave. Open up the floor for questions for Dave from 9i. Go ahead, Dr. Rutal.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute there. Why? This is very interesting. I actually have plenty of questions, but I'm going to go just with one today. Right. So you have chosen your beachhead market to be Air Force. Is that right?
Well, they chose us. I mean, they provided the initial funding. Up until then, we didn't have any seed funding to go forward. So yeah, they were willing, and we, like I said, I already had a relationship with the Joint Enhanced Munition Technology Program. So is that relationship where they said, yes, we were talking about this as a concept. They said they're interested, so we decided to go forward with them.
Right. I saw U.S. manufacturing as well. Is that where you're planning to move next?
So what we're doing is we're rolling out. I mean, this 9.3 it's a large amount of money to have as a phase 3 from one group for development funding. And what it is to roll out and actually deploy at Defense Production Act within the Secretary of Defense's office. So that will be the first actual deployment of the software. And then from that, yeah, so absolutely, we're going to be at several different manufacturing events that DPA supports. So one is in Denver this December. And probably by next December, we'll be rolling out at that conference also. But yeah, so we definitely have a direct transition to industrial customers.
Industrial, excellent. So you mentioned about 2 tracks, right? What humans do best, what machines do best. what I would love to see next in your next iteration is how you're going to integrate the two. Because this phrase, culture is a strategy for breakfast, I have a lot of experience with that. So I'm wondering, how are you planning to integrate the two sides, the machine side with the human side?
Well, see, that's inherent in what we're doing. So in other words, we're looking at the nine fundamental measurements, correct, for successful technology deployment. So by doing that, first of all, what we do is we start off with, it's really a matchmaking service of subject matter experts. It's, basically finding folks who have needs for technology development and matching them up with expertise. And as they're working as a team to assist the development team in making decisions, we have AI that's learning from all those great recommendations that we're making. So that's actually the training model is observing these subject matter experts as they're making recommendations. It's just that we have a very guided system in how we do that. And that's really the two-tier power set. That's what we're using for guidance.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, so we're going to run right through it. Derek, Joseph, and then Saul, and then we're going to cut on the questions. So Derek, you're up first.
Yeah, thanks so much for your presentation. That this type of technology is sorely needed. I know, having been in business development for startups and small businesses trying to win servers and get across the valley of death that you mentioned. I also know Tommy Hendricks, so I think you're in good company with him on your team. Sure. I am curious to know, so I understand that you got the phase 2, and then this would be considered the phase 3. Via DLA and OUSD, from what I understand. Have you implemented this technology on a company yet, or you're still building that out in order to actually push companies through the innovation?
Sure. Yeah. So the platform itself is brand new. I've been using these principles literally for over 15 years, like I said, to guide businesses that I've run and to help folks with development programs. Like I said, we're one of the largest test laboratories in the country. We ran over 3,000 programs a year. For the 7 years that I was the senior executive at Dayton T. Brown. And, that's what test labs do, is unfortunately, they point out failures over and over again. So I would use this method basically to show people, where they went wrong and what they need to do next in order to kind of be successful and take it to the next step. So this is really taking that process that I've been comfortable using for the last 15 years and turning it into a platform that other people can use. One of the main reasons for AI is because I can't be at every instance to kind of guide people along the way. So we're building in a way to learn from subject matter experts that are guiding folks, and then also kind of looking at a lot of big data to make great recommendations for folks.
And then, as far as business model, you would be continue to be paid by the government, or the fund you'd be paid by companies that were going through and being evaluated, or
sure. So it's
that?
Definitely subscription, because what this is, again, it's all about users. We'll definitely have subscriptions for companies and organizations as well. But it starts off with a subscription model. But the exciting thing about this is we're looking at it as a new marketplace, and we're looking at a transactional piece, which actually will probably offer revenues that are much higher than subscriptions. Because if we're matching up subject matter experts with folks that need them, it's kind of funny when you look at development projects, sometimes you only need like 8 hours or 10 hours, or maybe say a month of somebody's time for them to guide you through, say, a difficult part of a development program. So what we're going to do is we're going to offer a way that people can connect with each other, charge a specific rate, for services rendered, and then we'll take a slice of that as well. So those are the two big revenue streams that we're expecting.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Dave, this is Joe. I work for the Air Force Office of Commercial and Economic Analysis. So correct me if I'm understanding anything wrong, but I understand that your outputs are a set of objective scores along 9 dimensions that help decision makers make better investment decisions. What I don't understand is what the inputs are. What's the training data and the inference data that you're using to develop those scores?
Sure. So I'd have to probably go through the process in a little more detail in order to run that through with you. But what we're doing is we start off with low score. In order to increase your score as you're going through, what you need to do is we have, first of all, success factors that the subject matter experts are assigned to these 9 different categories. And then from each of those, there's proposals or there's technology reviews. And what we do is we look at specific levels of evidence that's available in order to acquire a certain score for each one of these 9 measurements. And if that evidence is missing, then basically we have to go and get that by either doing some prototyping, some testing, some evaluation, analysis, whatever it might be. So as you go through different TRLs, you're constantly increasing these scores until you get to the finish line. What usually happens in a lot of development activities is people just get blindsided within a development project. So lots of times folks are focused on just technology development. They're great technologists, but they're missing something about the team that's going to bring it forward. Or they've forgotten about, say, one of the critical application requirements. See, we look at the technology, and we're looking at the application, we're making sure that every step along the way, we're increasing the scores of all those simultaneously. So as far as the evidence is really what's driving those scores to increase. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Hey, thanks, Dave. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Hey, Dave, this is Saul Cates from Talis. So I've had the luxury of being a technology strategist, executive, to try to help drive lots of innovation through a very old business sometimes. So does Nine High have some either capabilities or benefits of adopting your platform that helps bring the technologies not only up to the top so people can see their value and benefit, but actually help with the team transformations that have to happen? Because
Absolutely.
teams have to pick this up and use it, I believe, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. My first hire into this company was a young engineer who's really, his master's degree he was going for was focused on organizational behavior and intelligence. And that to me was the most important part, because like I said, there's a lot of technologists who love technologies and are passionate about them. But lots of times it's the team that's lacking. Think of it as a continuum. You have a technology and you have an application you want to get to, but it is the team. And the team we break down into, the personnel, the processes, and the finances. So those are the three buckets that everything within the team has to fulfill. And then what we look at is those specific success factors that are required. So if you want to look at just personnel, we can talk about training, we can talk about background. A lot of things go wrong when you just look at somebody's experience versus what their capabilities are against the upcoming requirements, right? So everything that we know is based on experience from before. But when we start to map, say, a technology that you're developing against a similar technology for a similar application, you'll start to have better visibility into what's coming ahead of you so that you can build your team out ahead of time and have some preparation instead of relying on, well, I've done that before, I can do that again. Well, not necessarily, because it's a different application. So we really look at those forward-leaning types of aspects.